Welcome to the Jerome McClain Show. I'm your host, Jerome McClain, and let's get into our episode.
Of intelligence here, the endem of sarcasm, the nutty professor to your whack-ass marmalade. It's T-Bone from T-Bone and Chick Brew in the morning. Now available in podcast format. Simply search for the T-Bone and Chick Brew podcast, available wherever fine podcasts are sold.
There's a type of person who always sees what others miss. These are people who can catch the tiniest facial expressions, read emotions others try to hide, and notice psychological patterns no one else sees. They can easily see through social masks, spot lies right away, and feel the unspoken tension in any room. Most people call it sharp intuition, a great gift of intelligence. But the truth is, this ability is actually a harsh psychological burden. Because seeing through everything always comes with a heavy price. These people can't just switch off their minds to act naive and keep normal social relationships. Constantly noticing fake behavior pushes them into isolation, doubt, and complete emotional exhaustion. Not because they're unstable, but because they carry the weight of truths that no one else understands. This is an extremely dangerous line to walk. This rare level of awareness will either slowly destroy them or turn them into someone extraordinary. Today we're going to break down the psychology of people who see what others don't and how they can avoid being consumed by their own minds. Welcome back, I'm Apex. Let's get started. To understand why some people can see what others miss, we need to take the spiritual angle off the table. From a neuroscience point of view, this comes from high-speed data processing called thin slicing, combined with the ability to detect incongruence. Imagine the average human brain as an audience watching a play. They look at the stage and believe everything the actors say, but the brain of a highly perceptive person works differently. Their subconscious automatically watches the velvet curtain behind the stage. They notice the broken props, the prompter's hand, the actor's nervous sweat. Their brain is a 24/7 data collection machine, always searching for technical errors in behavior. Human beings communicate through two channels, verbal and nonverbal. Most people only focus on words, but people who see through things have a built-in radar system that is extremely sensitive to the nonverbal channel. They pay attention to what Dr. Paul Ekman calls micro-expressions, tiny facial movements that flash by in just 1/15th to 1/25th of a second, revealing the real emotion a person is trying to hide. When a coworker says, "I'm really happy you got promoted," the perceptive person immediately catches the incongruence. They hear the voice rise half a tone, see that the smile does not reach the corners of the eyes, or catch a quick flicker of jealousy. The brain instantly sends up an alert, data error. The words and the body do not match. This is a lie. This process happens unconsciously and in a flash. It is like tasting a bowl of soup and knowing it is salty. They do not need to overthink it. The tongue simply reports the truth. But the scariest part is not seeing the lie. It is seeing the reason behind it. When pattern recognition combines with theory of mind, they strip away the mask and see the other person's insecurity and fear. They look at a boss who is yelling and see a child terrified of losing control. They look at someone who keeps bragging and see a pit of insecurity craving validation. That may sound like a huge advantage in communication, but in reality, seeing through people often pushes them into three exhausting psychological traps. Trap 1, becoming the accidental villain. In Greek mythology, there was a prophetess named Cassandra. Apollo gave her a wonderful gift, the ability to see the future and know the truth. But that gift came with a cruel curse. No one would ever believe what she said. Cassandra always saw disaster before it arrived. She screamed warnings, but people only saw her as crazy, negative, and disruptive. People with these see-through eyes in modern life are the Cassandras of social relationships. The truth is, human society is built on polite lies and masks. We need masks to survive, to keep work running smoothly, to keep families peaceful. Everyone silently agrees to take part in a shared performance. And then they show up. The people who refuse to wear sunglasses, the ones carrying a giant spotlight and shining it straight into the dark, moldy corners everyone is trying to keep hidden. Let's look at what happens in a dating situation. They meet someone on a dating app. From the very first coffee date, the other person shows up polished and charming, talking nonstop about billion-dollar projects, luxury trips, and acting like the perfect gentleman or dream partner. A normal guy or girl might be overwhelmed, fall into admiration, and believe they have met fate. But not them. Their radar has already scanned the other person's whole psychological structure within 15 minutes. They realize that overconfidence is actually a form of overcompensation. They notice the constant eye movements checking for reactions, proving that the person is performing, not living naturally. They recognize that rushed enthusiasm as a hidden manipulation script. When they tell their friends this person feels way too fake, their friends look at them like they are paranoid and ruining their own happiness. You're too picky. They seem so nice. Because the crowd only sees the tip of the iceberg, while they see what is underneath. With no proof other than intuition, nobody believes them. They become the bad guy in their own story. Things get even worse in the workplace or inside friend groups. When they have this kind of insight, they accidentally take away other people's chance to play their role. When one coworker keeps complaining and acting like a victim of a cruel boss to win sympathy from the whole office, everyone comforts them. But the person with sharp perception knows the truth. They know this coworker is actually missing deadlines, working irresponsibly, and using tears to manipulate public opinion. They do not comfort them. Sometimes they just let out one simple, realistic comment. Honestly, if you had managed your time better on this project, your boss probably would not have said that. And boom, the whole mood changes instantly. That coworker turns on them with sharp hatred. Why? In psychoanalysis, this is called projection and ego defense. When the true nature a person is trying to hide gets exposed, they go through intense shame and humiliation. To protect a collapsing ego, the brain strikes back. They do not admit the truth. Instead, they turn the perceptive person into the villain. They start saying that person is cold, arrogant, judgmental, and lacking empathy. As we can see, truth is expensive. When these people see through others, they do not earn respect. They create fear. They make other people feel psychologically naked. And by survival instinct, human beings always want to destroy the person who holds their secrets. Little by little, people with this ability learn a cruel rule. Their clarity makes others uncomfortable. So they choose silence. They smile and nod. They pretend not to know. But that silence creates a huge empty space in the soul and pushes them into an even scarier trap. Trap 2. The reading people obsession and overthinking. When they can't trust what others say, they start trusting only their own analysis. This is when observation stops being a helpful tool and turns into a toxic risk control mechanism. Let's call this the detective trap. Because these people are so used to spotting lies behind smiles, they begin to assume that everything has a hidden meaning. Nothing feels as simple as it looks. They lose their innocence in relationships. A compliment from a partner is never just a compliment. It feels like a setup for a future favor. A gift from a lover is not seen as romance. Their brain immediately asks, what is he feeling guilty about? A reply that comes 30 minutes late is not because the other person is busy. It becomes a sign of distance, a loss of priority, the beginning of the end. They trap themselves in a loop of constant high alert. What is the real purpose of this vigilance? To never get hurt. They stay in this loop to protect themselves. They believe that if they can predict every betrayal, they won't feel pain when it happens. Their sensitivity turns into psychological armor. But this armor is too heavy, and it blocks all real emotions. By constantly analyzing and guessing, they fall into a dangerous thinking error called confirmation bias. When they believe someone is hiding something, their brain filters all information to prove that belief is right and ignores anything that says otherwise. They see their partner's tired eyes after a long day and instantly interpret it as, she's getting bored of me. They stop trusting the present because they are busy living inside 10 worst-case scenarios of the future. They win every mental game. They expose every mask. They never get fooled. But the price is they can never relax. Innocence, unconditional trust, the peace of resting your head on someone's shoulder without overthinking, those become luxuries. They are like someone with extremely sensitive hearing, able to hear the cracks in a building before it collapses. It helps them survive, but it takes away their ability to enjoy music because every sound is analyzed as a threat. And the exhaustion does not just come from overthinking, it also comes from another invisible weight, the burden of unspoken truths. Trap 3. Becoming an emotional dumping ground. There is a very strange kind of loneliness that only people who see everything can understand. It is not the loneliness of being alone. It is the loneliness of standing in a crowd, watching a tragedy unfold, and not being able to say a word. They attend a close friend's wedding. Everyone is cheering and celebrating. But through the groom's glance at the bridesmaid or the bride's forced smile hiding anxiety, they know the marriage is built on sand. They see the collapse at the very moment of celebration, yet they still raise a glass and say, "Wishing you a lifetime of happiness." It feels like knowing the Titanic is about to sink while standing in first class, watching everyone dance. They cannot warn anyone because no one would believe them, and they would ruin the moment. Or they see a kind coworker being taken advantage of again and again by a manipulative, toxic boss. They see the exhaustion in that coworker's eyes, but they also know that if they step in, if they tell the truth, it will be denied. Because to survive, that coworker is using denial, a protective shield they have no right to take away. Holding all these truths slowly drains their life energy. It creates a quiet, chronic heaviness. They feel compassion for people who do not realize they are being deceived, yet at the same time they feel disgust toward the fake masks of the world. Their mind is stuck between deep empathy and bitter skepticism. And the saddest part, because they are so good at reading people, they understand others' needs before a single word is spoken. They know how to act in ways that please everyone, becoming great diplomats. But in return, no one reads them. No one knows what they truly need or where they are hurting. People assume they are too strong, too smart to need protection. The one who heals the world becomes like a glass wall. They see through everyone, but when others look at them, they only see their own reflection. So what is the way out for a mind that cannot stop seeing the truth? They cannot simply switch off their sensitivity. Forcing themselves to think less is like asking someone with perfect 20/20 vision to pretend everything is blurry. It is impossible. The goal is not to see less. The goal is to change how they respond to what they see. In therapeutic psychology, this kind of transformation requires them to build cognitive boundaries and practice the following 3 survival principles. Principle 1, strategic ignorance. This is the art of knowing everything but not reacting to everything. Clearly separate truth from responsibility. They see a coworker obviously sucking up to the boss in a fake way. That's the truth. But the real question is it their job to expose that person? No. Does it affect their KPIs? No. Then treat it like a cloud passing across the sky. They can see it's gray, but they don't need to fly up and push it away. Leave behind the ego that wants to play the Lord of Truth.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Has anybody ever told you you were over-opinionated? How about this one? You can talk about everything you like, but don't talk about religion. Don't talk about faith. Don't talk about politics. My name is Jerome McClain, host of Jerome McClain Show, and I want to introduce you to a show called Over-Opinionated with my friend from Southwest Virginia, Josh Scott. Josh has always been told he has been over-opinionated. He always tried to hold back these opinions, but he tried to back them up when he had to say something with facts and logic. Since he's grown up in many ways, he had to change a lot of his views and his opinions, as a lot of people should. He's not a millionaire from Fox News or CNN. He's just a hard-working, blue-collar type of guy. Give Josh Scott a shot at Over-Opinionated with Josh Scott. You can find him on patreon.com. slash overopinionated at 679. You can also check him out on Twitter at NRV_guy79. Overopinionated with Josh Scott. Why, he is this soft-spoken guy telling you the truth.
We talk about a lot of serious topics on this show. One very serious topic is women's health. One company that stood out to me was vslay.com because the owner is very transparent about her own struggles in the women's health department and has great customer service, great deals, and frequent sales. You can check her out, her great customer service, products about women's health, and frequent sales at www.vslay.com. That is www.vslay.com.
Their ability to see through things is a tool for gathering information, helping them make safer decisions for themselves. For example, not working with that fake person. Not a weapon to judge or clean up the world. Principle 2, accept social masks. The suffering of perceptive people often comes from having standards that are too high when it comes to authenticity. They expect everyone to be real, to be transparent, but look again with more empathy through a psychological lens. Why do people wear masks? It's not always to deceive or harm. Most people wear masks to hide wounds, insecurity, and the fear of not being loved. That loud, bragging guy at the table is really just a boy craving attention. The friend who always seems cold and arrogant is actually shaking inside, afraid of being betrayed again. Sometimes a lie is the only thing keeping them from falling apart. Once they understand this, anger or disgust toward fake behavior starts to fade. In its place comes radical acceptance. They see the mask, but they don't rip it off. They simply smile and allow the other person to feel safe inside it. The greatest form of understanding is not exposing someone's weakness, but seeing it clearly and still choosing to treat them with kindness. Principle 3, forgive the blind spots of the present. To escape the detective trap, they must accept one risk. Stop trying to control the future. When their radar signals that a partner might be lying, they can acknowledge it, store it in the back of their mind, but not let it ruin the present moment. If their intuition says there's a 20% chance the relationship could end badly, they should have the courage to accept the 20% and still enjoy the 80% of joy right now. Living fully requires the courage to sometimes get hurt. They can see the thorns on a rose, but if they keep analyzing how sharp each thorn is, they will never smell the flower. Allow themselves at times to be intentionally blind, so the mind can rest and the heart can beat like a normal person's. When they learn to let go like this, something almost magical happens. Their ability to observe doesn't disappear. It evolves into something greater, true wisdom. They are no longer a cold X-ray machine exposing every flaw. They become a quiet lighthouse. They see all the hidden rocks and dangerous currents, but instead of panicking, they calmly guide their ship through. This level of perception is a brutal gift, but also the most beautiful one, if they learn how to master it. If you see yourself in this video, if you've always noticed what others miss, remember this: you are not alone. So among the 3 psychological traps we just explored, which one do you fall into the most? And more importantly, are you ready to commit to practicing these 3 principles to protect your mind? Share in the comments. I'd really like to hear your story. If today's video brought you value, hit like and share it with someone who might also be struggling with an overly sensitive mind. Have you ever noticed something strange? Some people have a very rare kind of intelligence. They're extremely perceptive, emotionally intelligent, and they often pick up on subtle signals that most people completely miss. But here's the interesting part. This ability doesn't come from books, school, or any kind of training program. It comes from trauma. Sounds a little weird, right? Trauma can actually make someone smarter, but it's true. Many modern psychologists are now talking about a concept called traumatic intelligence. What makes it unique is this: the very thing that once hurt you might also be the thing that reprogrammed how you see and understand the world. You've probably met people like this before, or maybe you are one of them and don't even realize it. In today's video, we're going to explore 10 signs that you might have one of the rarest and most powerful forms of intelligence, but also one of the most misunderstood, and especially the last sign, the one you've always thought was a weakness, but is actually the most important part of this whole system. Let's get started. Sign 1. The ability to read the room. You know that feeling? You walk into a party, or even just a normal family dinner. People are sitting there, maybe laughing, maybe eating, but you instantly feel this underlying tension in the air. You can tell there was an argument earlier, or that someone is holding on to something they're not saying out loud. This isn't magic or some kind of spiritual intuition. It's the result of your brain being trained in pattern recognition. In the past, being able to sense other people's moods early, especially people who were unpredictable, was the only way you could protect yourself. Now your brain automatically scans for signals, a quick glance away, slightly tense shoulders, or a shorter than usual breath. You read these cues so fast and so accurately that it can actually feel exhausting because you can't just turn off this observation mode even when you just want to relax. Sign 2, predictive empathy. Most people define empathy as, I see that you're sad, so I feel sad with you. But that's just the basic level. When you have intelligence shaped by trauma, your empathy evolves into something much sharper. Prediction. The ability to see what someone needs before they even realize it themselves. Imagine this. You're sitting in a cafe with a friend who's talking about problems at work. You notice they keep fidgeting with their sleeve, or their eyes keep drifting toward the open door. Even though they say, I'm fine, it's nothing, you quietly get up, close the door, and when you come back, you hand them a napkin right as a tear is about to fall. You don't wait for them to ask. You predict their needs based on tiny changes in their body language that you've learned to recognize. This ability is very similar to what happened with Oprah Winfrey. She has shared that her difficult childhood and experiences with abuse forced her to learn how to read the people around her in order to protect herself. That emotional radar, shaped through pain, helped turn her into one of the greatest interviewers in the world because she can sense hidden emotions in her guests from something as small as a blink or a quiet breath. You have this kind of intelligence too. You know when a friend needs silence instead of advice. You know when your partner is exhausted, even if they say they're fine. You don't just empathize with your heart, you empathize with a whole emotional data processing system running quietly in your mind. You create a safe space for others because deep down, you understand the cost of living in a place that doesn't feel safe. Sign 3, a strange calm when everything falls apart. This is an interesting paradox. Many people assume that those who've been through trauma are more likely to panic or overreact. But in reality, it's often the opposite. Think back to a time when you were in an emergency. Maybe a minor accident on the road, a heated argument breaking out in a meeting, or bad news hitting you all at once right before a deadline. While everyone around you starts losing control, yelling, or freezing in fear, you feel a strange sense of calm take over. In that moment, your mind works like a high-performance computer, switching into fight mode. You begin to prioritize things with cold precision. What needs to be done first? Who needs to be called right now? What's the most effective solution? Psychologists call this stress inoculation. Because your nervous system has already been shaped by much bigger battles in the past, everyday problems in modern life aren't enough to shake you. You're used to living in a constant state of high alert, so when a real crisis hits, it doesn't overwhelm you. You simply follow the response patterns you've practiced thousands of times in your mind. You become the anchor for everyone around you, the one person who can keep the ship from sinking when the storm hits. This is a kind of real-world intelligence, a quiet form of leadership that no business school can truly teach. Sign 4, the ability to dissect human behavior. You never just accept things at face value. When someone treats you badly or acts in a strange way, your first reaction isn't always anger or judgment. It's analytical curiosity. Why did they act like that? Are they feeling threatened? Or are they unconsciously repeating wounds from their own past? You're like a real psychologist, just without the degree. You spend a lot of time replaying conversations in your head, not to criticize, but to understand the deeper layers hidden beneath social masks. You notice how someone chooses their words, how they avoid eye contact when a certain topic comes up. This level of understanding often makes you more compassionate than most because you know that behind every toxic behavior is usually an unhealed wound. But this depth of thinking is also a heavy burden. You can't live on the surface. You see the truth behind polished lies, the deep loneliness behind loud laughter at parties. To you, every person is like a complex maze, full of dead ends and hidden treasures, and you can't stop trying to map it out. You don't just see the person in front of you, you see the entire emotional history behind them. Sign 5. A gut feeling you can't explain. Sometimes everything looks completely normal. Someone talks to you in a friendly tone. They smile at the right moments, react appropriately, even say all the right things. From the outside, nothing seems off, but inside you, something lights up. A slight discomfort, a subtle mismatch. Like something doesn't quite line up, even though you can't name what it is. You don't have proof. You don't want to jump to conclusions. You might even tell yourself you're overthinking, but the feeling stays. And the strange thing is, many times later, you realize you were right. The truth slowly reveals itself. That person wasn't as genuine as they seemed, or they were hiding something. This isn't vague intuition. It's a warning system built from experience. When you've lived in environments where safety wasn't always real, your brain learns not to fully trust appearances. It learns to listen to very subtle signals inside you. So you don't just see the world, you can feel when something about it isn't real. Sign 6. Extreme independence. You're the kind of person who always has a plan B, plan C, and even plan D for everything. If you suddenly lose your job, you don't sit around waiting for help. You start researching new ways to make money or updating your resume that very night. If something breaks at home, your first instinct is to look up a tutorial and fix it yourself instead of calling someone. This independence comes from a hard-earned belief. No one is really coming to save me except myself. When your early environment wasn't stable enough to rely on, your brain learned to internalize every solution. You became incredibly resourceful. You can survive anywhere, in any situation. But the downside is that it's very hard for you to accept help. Depending on someone feels risky, like a kind of weakness that could lead to getting hurt. You'd rather carry the whole world on your shoulders than owe someone a thank you. You're learning that independence is a strength, but allowing support is wisdom. Sign 7. Experiencing the world in high resolution. This relates to something called high sensitivity. Psychologist Elaine Aron studied this and found that some people have nervous systems that process information much more deeply than average. For you, a beautiful song isn't just sound. It's something that moves your entire soul. A glowing sunset can leave you completely still, overwhelmed by emotion. But on the flip side, loud noise, strong smells, or news about injustice can hit you just as deeply, as if you're experiencing the pain yourself. Your nervous system, already opened up by past experiences, doesn't have much of a filter to block out outside stimulation. You feel other people's joy as your own, and the pain of the world can weigh on your heart every day. This emotional depth is what creates great compassion and limitless creativity. You notice beauty in the smallest things others overlook. Sunlight slipping through leaves, a warm smile from a stranger, or a quiet moment early in the morning. You don't live on the surface. You live fully, in every cell, in every breath. And even though this intensity can be exhausting, it also makes your life more vivid and meaningful than most. Sign 8. A high but deep trust threshold. You're not the type to have thousands of friends on social media and call everyone a best friend. You keep your distance, observe, and evaluate how someone treats people who are weaker than them, how they keep their promises, even the small ones. You look for consistency in their actions over time before allowing them into your safe circle. Psychologists call this adaptive skepticism. It's not negativity. It's a smart filtering system that protects your inner world from harm. But once someone passes your strict standards, you give them absolute loyalty. You'll be the first to show up when they're in trouble. The one who keeps their secrets no matter what. You value quality over quantity. Your intelligence helps you build a small but incredibly strong support system made up of people who are genuinely kind and real. Sign 9. A complicated relationship with stillness. Have you ever sat on the couch to watch a movie, but your mind keeps racing, thinking about unfinished tasks, plans for next year, or even worrying about things that haven't happened yet? For you, doing nothing can sometimes feel more uncomfortable than relaxing. This is a leftover effect of hypervigilance becoming your brain's default setting. In the past, silence often meant something bad was about to happen, so your brain learned a harsh rule. Only when I'm busy, only when I'm in control, am I truly safe. Wow. You may find yourself becoming a workaholic, or constantly filling your time with activities just to avoid those quiet moments. Learning how to truly relax, to be present without judging yourself, is one of the biggest and hardest lessons in your healing journey. You're slowly teaching your brain, it's safe now. Rest is not a mistake. Rest is how I recharge for the long road ahead. Sign 10, intense sensitivity to injustice. This is the one that often makes you question yourself the most. The thing you may see as a flaw that makes you seem too much or different. Do you ever feel a deep, almost shaking anger when you see injustice, online or in real life, even when it doesn't directly affect you? You can't stand seeing someone being bullied, treated unfairly, or watching moral values get openly ignored. Most people might tell you, just let it go, it's not your problem, or why do you take it so seriously? But for you, ignoring what's wrong feels almost biologically impossible. This is actually a form of advanced moral intelligence shaped by trauma. If you've ever been a victim of injustice or watched someone you love suffer without being able to help, your value system becomes incredibly sharp. You develop an almost instinctive sense of what's right and wrong. You crave authenticity and fairness, sometimes to an extreme level. People like Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, used this kind of intelligence to create profound ideas about the meaning of life. He didn't let pain turn him numb or cruel. Instead, he turned it into a deeper search for meaning. Your sensitivity to justice makes you a quiet protector, someone who can create change in the small but to exist unnoticed. This is the highest expression of traumatic intelligence, the ability to turn personal pain into a sense of purpose and kindness for others. What others may call your weakness is actually the core strength that keeps the world from becoming cold and indifferent. Trauma-shaped intelligence isn't something anyone would choose from the start. No one wants to trade a carefree childhood for this kind of awareness. This isn't about glorifying trauma. Life doesn't give us a choice about what we go through, but it does give us a choice about who we become afterward. If you see yourself in all 10 of these signs, understand this. You are not broken. You are living proof of human resilience and adaptability. You've turned pieces of pain into lenses that help you see the world more clearly. You carry the sharpness of a detective, the compassion of a healer, and the strength of a warrior who has walked through fire. Your awareness, your empathy, even your tendency to overthink, all of it comes together to create a version of you that is truly unique and valuable. You are like a lighthouse shining in the dark, not because you've never seen darkness, but because you've learned how to survive it and shine through it. I hope today's video helped you put a name to the feelings and abilities you may have doubted about yourself for so long. You're not alone on this journey. Out there is a whole community of people with traumatic intelligence just like you, quietly making the world more thoughtful and more human. The world is talking a lot about a loneliness epidemic. In the United States, more and more people admit that they feel isolated and disconnected from the people around them. But you're going in the opposite direction. You've started cutting certain people out of your life. And the thing that surprises you the most is how you feel afterward. Not guilt, not regret, just relief. A strangely peaceful feeling, as if something loud in your life has finally been switched off. Of course, most people don't see it that way. They call you cold. They say you're heartless. Some even think you're ruining your own relationships. But what if the truth is the exact opposite? What if disconnecting from certain people is actually a survival mechanism of the brain? Maybe you're not running away at all. Maybe you're simply starting to see things more clearly than before. So what is really happening inside your mind? First, let's clear up one thing. You didn't wake up one morning and suddenly decide to turn your back on a few people. You woke up after many years. You used to be the one who picked up the phone at 3 a.m. You were the person who sat for hours listening to everyone's drama. You listened to them cry about their ex, complain about work, and vent about all the unfair things in their lives. You absorbed all that negative energy. You always tried to give advice. You always tried to help them sort things out. You were there for everyone. But then one day, when your own life hit a dead end, when you were the one who needed a shoulder, when you were completely exhausted, you looked around and realized there was no one there. Psychologists actually have a name for this. They call it compassion fatigue. At first, the term was used to describe the burnout experienced by healthcare workers and therapists, a condition where constantly empathizing and constantly dealing with other people's pain and problems leaves someone completely drained emotionally. Your energy tank didn't just run empty on its own. It was drained through hundreds, even thousands of moments when you put other people before yourself. After years of giving without conditions, your system finally shut down. And some people, like you, start choosing to step back. Not because you hate them, but because you need to save yourself. You need to restore the little bit of psychological energy you have left. But the story doesn't stop at exhaustion. Why does the feeling of being abandoned or used make you react so strongly that you want to cut someone off forever? That's when we need to look deeper at how your nervous system is working. It's trying to protect you. Think about the times you were in a relationship that constantly left you feeling drained. You kept listening, kept giving, kept trying to keep everything stable. But after every conversation, you felt like a piece of your energy had been taken away. After a while, you became so tired that just seeing that person's name pop up on your phone made you sigh. This isn't only an emotional issue. It's directly connected to how our nervous system works. According to many studies on nervous system regulation, our brain is constantly scanning the environment to answer one very simple question. Is this place safe or not? Dr. Stephen Porges, who developed polyvagal theory, suggests that the human nervous system has several different modes of operation. When the environment feels safe, we naturally connect, talk, and open up to others. But when the brain keeps receiving signals of stress, disappointment, or being taken advantage of, the nervous system can switch into a protective state. In this state, the body begins to do something very simple. It reduces interaction and pulls back to conserve energy. In simpler terms, your nervous system may be trying to say, we've spent too much energy here. Maybe it's time to step back. So sometimes when you distance yourself from certain people, it isn't an impulsive decision. It may actually be your nervous system trying to protect a very important resource, your emotional energy. But that leads to another question. Why is your nervous system more sensitive to these signals than other people's? We have to go back in time, back to where it all began, the roots in your childhood. For many people who tend to prefer silence and withdrawal, the way they handle relationships was actually programmed when they were very young. A child who didn't grow up surrounded by hugs or a deep sense of safety. That child grew up in an environment where conflict happened all the time. Doors slamming during arguments, heavy silence hanging in the air, a home where the atmosphere was always tense, where the emotions of the adults filled the entire space, while the child's feelings were pushed into a corner, ignored, or treated like a burden. If you were that child, what could you do to survive? You couldn't fight back. You were too small. So you learned how to adapt. Children who grow up in environments like this often develop an unexpected survival skill, the ability to read the room. You learned to notice the smallest changes in an adult's facial expression. You could tell which footsteps meant someone was about to explode in anger. You learned to make yourself smaller, to stay quiet so you wouldn't trigger more chaos. You grew up too early. You became mature too early. Psychology actually has a clear explanation for this. According to attachment theory, developed by pioneering psychologists John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, our early bonding experiences with caregivers create a kind of blueprint that strongly shapes how we build relationships later in life. When a child grows up in an unstable environment where their voice is constantly pushed aside to make room for the unpredictable emotions of adults, they slowly learn that safety is a rare luxury. To survive, instead of listening to their own inner world, they are forced to constantly scan the moods of the people around them. They learn to calm tension, try to keep everything stable, and sometimes place other people's needs ahead of their own. But over time, this type of adaptation can create a complicated loop. A deep desire for connection with others, mixed with a fear of being hurt or emotionally drained. That's why, as adults, many people tend to give a lot in relationships. But at some point when they realize they are being drained, their self-protection instinct kicks in, and they begin to pull away. But don't get it wrong. You're not crazy and you're not acting irrationally. Your ability to step back comes with a gift, a kind of skill you have sharpened over the years. The ability to recognize patterns in people's behavior. Most people don't walk away from a relationship after just one disappointment. But sometimes, after a while, you start to notice that what's happening isn't random. It's a pattern. You might realize that there's someone who only contacts you when they need something. At first you think it's just a coincidence, but then it happens again the next month. And the month after that, the same thing. Or there's someone who praises you a lot, but every compliment comes with a request, a favor, some kind of obligation that you end up carrying. Or someone enters your life with intense attention, constant messages, big promises, and then suddenly they disappear, leaving you wondering what just happened. When these kinds of behaviors repeat over and over, you start to feel like you've seen this story before. And that feeling isn't just intuition. In psychology and neuroscience, Researchers suggest that the human brain works like a prediction system. It constantly records patterns of behavior from the past in order to predict what might happen next. Some studies show that people who experienced emotional stress early in life often develop a stronger social alert system. The areas of the brain related to detecting danger signals and reading other people's emotional cues tend to react more quickly. What does that mean? It means that after years of observing, experiencing, and sometimes being disappointed, your brain has collected a huge amount of data about how people behave. So when you see the same patterns repeating, apologies that never come with real change, relationships that only exist when you're the one giving, cycles of attention followed by disappearance, your brain starts making a prediction that if the story continues, the outcome probably won't be any different from before. And sometimes the moment you recognize that pattern is the moment you decide to step out of the loop. Not because you're cold, but because you've learned how to listen to what your own experiences are trying to tell you. At this point, the voices around you start to rise again. Society begins to judge. They say, you're building walls, you're locking yourself away, you're too extreme. But they're making a serious mistake by confusing two completely different things, boundaries and walls. Take a look at your life right now. Maybe you've stopped talking to 5 people, maybe 10, people who used to drain your energy. You no longer show up at meaningless social gatherings, but you still keep 1 or 2 people in your life. People you can sit with in silence without feeling uncomfortable. People you can call and cry to without being judged. Relationships that are truly healthy and balanced. So you're not broken at all. You're simply practicing a fundamental concept in psychology, setting personal boundaries. A wall is built from fear. A wall is blind. It blocks everyone without caring whether they are good or harmful. It traps you inside the darkness. But boundaries are different. Boundaries are like a door with a lock and a peephole. They are built from self-respect. Boundaries are selective. They allow you to open the door for people who bring sincerity and warmth into your life. At the same time, they keep toxic people outside, preventing them from entering and destroying your peaceful space. Letting someone leave your life doesn't mean you hate people in general. It simply means you love yourself enough to stop allowing anyone to dump their trash into your space. And once you set those boundaries, you begin to discover a beautiful truth. A truth that very few people in this noisy world truly understand. Being alone does not mean being lonely. There is a big misconception that society places on us. People mix up 2 ideas, being alone and loneliness. But they are completely opposite states. Have you ever stood in the middle of a crowded party? Loud music, people laughing, glasses clinking everywhere. Yet deep inside, you felt completely out of place. You're standing there, but no one truly sees you. That is true loneliness. Loneliness isn't when no one is around you. It's when you are surrounded by people who cannot connect with your soul. On the other hand, think about the moments when you sit alone in a quiet room. You make a cup of tea. You read a book. You work on something you enjoy, or simply do nothing at all and stare out the window. Your phone stays silent. No one demands that you behave a certain way, and you feel a deep sense of peace filling your chest. That isn't loneliness. Research on solitude and self-determination theory shows a very clear difference. When being alone is a voluntary choice, it becomes a state called constructive solitude. This voluntary time alone is a powerful form of emotional detox. It helps you restore emotional energy after years of exhaustion. It strengthens self-awareness, allowing you to hear your inner voice without the noise of other people's opinions. Most importantly, it greatly reduces the social pressure and stress you once carried. You are not hiding in a dark corner. You are recharging your batteries in your own sacred space. So let me tell you this, you are not running away. You are moving toward peace. But once your life becomes quieter, something else begins to happen. It's not that the world around you changes, it's the way you see it. Before, when someone hurt you, your first reaction was often to try to understand them. You wondered what they might be going through. You searched for reasons to explain their behavior. Maybe they were just tired. Maybe they were struggling. Maybe they didn't really mean it that way. So you gave them more time, more chances, and more hope that things would eventually change. But after spending enough time in silence, something starts to shift. You no longer feel the need to explain people's behavior. You begin to notice a simple truth. People usually show you who they are more clearly than you think. Not through what they say, but through how they show up in your life, through how they treat your boundaries, and through whether they are truly there when you need them. This awakening doesn't make you cold. It simply makes you stop trying to fix things that were never your responsibility. And when you stop trying to force everything back to the way it was, the relationships in your life begin to reveal their true nature. Before we close this story, ask yourself a very simple question. Does having more people in your life really make you happier? Since childhood, we are often taught that the more friends and relationships we have, the more complete our lives will be. But as people grow older, many begin to realize a different truth. Not every relationship nourishes you. Some relationships make you feel seen, heard, and free to be yourself. But others make you constantly tense, constantly explaining yourself, constantly sacrificing your peace just to keep things fine. And over time, many people begin to understand something important. Life is not measured by the number of people around you, but by how safe you feel when you are with them. So, if today your circle is smaller than before, if your contact list is no longer full of names, but the people who remain are those who truly respect your boundaries, people who don't force you to explain your silence, people who make you feel lighter just by being around them, then maybe you didn't lose relationships at all. You simply removed the noise to keep what truly matters. Sometimes growing up isn't about meeting more new people. It's about learning to recognize who truly deserves to stay. So if your circle today is smaller, but more peaceful, then you are probably doing the right thing. Keep protecting your peace. If you appreciate thoughtful and deep analyses like this, please subscribe to the channel and share the video to support it. Your support is the greatest motivation for me to keep exploring the deep mysteries of the human mind. I'm Apex, and I'll see you again in the next journey of discovery.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Of course, if you want to support the show, you can do so by going to www.patreon.com and getting a membership for as little as $3 a month. Again, that's www.patreon.com/The Jerome McClain Show. The Jerome McClain Show is fully listener-supported, independent media that won't lead you to tribalism. Get a membership and support independent media at www.patreon.com/The Jerome McClain Show.